before as well. They have plantigrade feet, meaning that they can stand up a lot better, gives them more stability standing. That also seems to correlate to a more powerful swing when they hit things. So if you're standing firmly planted, it's easier to swipe and hit. Each paw does have 5 digits with 5 claws on them, and really long claws. So claws. They are a long, curved claw, somewhere between 2 and 4 inches. They're developed and evolved for digging. So they're not a really sharp claw, and they're not really meant to be ripping things apart. They're meant to be digging, and this is how you dig out that den when you're a grizzly bear in winter. So they do have that shoulder hump. It is composed mostly of muscle and fat, meaning that they can dig really well. See where all this is going? We can dig, we can get into that hibernation phase. We're doing pretty well. All right, they have very large teeth, but since they do have that varied diet, they both have large canines, but also molars. So they are evolved to work on both scales there. Their fur, as we mentioned, can go in all sorts of colors. They also have 2 layers of fur. So they have that undercoat, which is all nice and soft and warm, and then they have a guard fur that is 3 to 4 inches that covers all of that under fur. Keeps the warmth in, tends to keep a little bit more of the rain out, so that we're a nice warm bear. All right, we're gonna attempt a video for y'all. Alright, so grizzlies, since they have extra fur over winter, much like a dog or a cat would be shedding, or most of our animals around here, so they have to schlump off their extra fur. So we found a video for you.
And the bears are keen to shed their thick winter coats. Mothers show the cubs what to do about this. They'll soon catch on. Some trees, it seems, are particularly suitable for rubbing. Bears have their favourites and will travel long distances to visit them. Some itches just have to be scratched. There are now about 30 bears in this one valley. As they rub, each leaves an individual and recognizable scent. So the tree soon carries a list of who's around, which might help individuals to avoid a fight. To best spread their scent, they really have to put their back into it.
Taste that. I still have it on tape. It's so funny. I think we'll all remember that one. Yeah.
underneath all that wonderful fur that we just got rid of. There is a nice layer of fat. Fat, as it does in most animals, insulates them, keeps them nice and warm. They, like I said earlier, as they gain more weight and more fat, their arteries are not hardened, they don't suffer from high cholesterol. And of course in that video, Sir David Attenborough was talking about their scent of smell. These guys have an amazingly powerful nose. It's estimated to be about 100 times what humans are. So scent is one of their strongest senses. Alright, so I'm going to pass this up to Maddie for history.
All right. So worldwide, brown bears used to be even more common than today. You can see on this map, the historic range is the lighter color. The current range is the darker color on the map. So even though they have disappeared from a lot of their range, they're still considered least concern because they're very widely distributed throughout the world. So they still have a really large worldwide population of about 200,000, with over half of those living in Russia. In the US, we have about 30,000, a little more than 30,000 grizzlies still in the US, but most of those are living in Alaska. So they're up there. You can see, even though they've got pretty stable populations, when it gets to their lower latitudes, especially in the lower 48 states, they start to get really fragmented. So it's those fragmented populations that really need management help still. So California history, obviously the grizzly bear has been a big symbol in California. It's on our flag. It originally became part of the flag design when Californians were still under Mexican rule and they were trying to secede, trying to gain independence. So that grizzly kind of served as a symbol for fierce resistance and strength. So we really like the symbolism of the bear. We like embodying that strength and independence as Californians. However, didn't like sharing our places so much with them. So you can see we really revered them. There used to be 10,000 grizzlies in California, but less than 75 years after people started moving here, they were all gone. So there's reasons for those declines, mostly in 1848, the repeating rifle was invented, and then 1 year later, the gold rush happened. So a bunch of people started coming here, taking over territories that were occupied by grizzlies, and they also had repeating rifles now. So it gave them the tools to kind of clear them out, kind of take over, and like I said, by 1924, all of the grizzlies in California had been killed. So currently, we've got a map of the North American bears. Again, the lighter color is their historic range in North America. The darker color is their current range. So we've got a little over 30,000 bears in Alaska. These numbers are a little off considering where you get them from. I'll go into them in a further slide. We've also got a really big population in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. The second, another large population around Glacier National Park. And so all of these bears in the lower 48 states are actually protected because there's these fragmented populations that need our help. Alaska's doing pretty well, they're pretty healthy. So all of those bears are protected, except for recently our Yellowstone ecosystem bears have been removed from the threatened species list. So as you can see, they're still doing really well up north, but they do occupy less than 2% of the range that they used to occupy in the lower 48 states. So this picture is actually from Alaska. Grizzlies aren't social. They are solitary animals, but you can see they've got a really healthy population in Alaska, and they do kind of gather around feeding areas. So this is near a salmon spawning spot in Alaska. All right, so this is just a little closer look at our lower 48 state populations. These are recovery zones. So these are zones that have been identified by the government of territories of grizzlies that need our help. And basically they have recovery plans in place. And the hope is that you see all these arrows going from each population. Once they've recovered to the point to where they don't need our help as much, hopefully they'd be healthy enough to migrate from each population into each other. All right, so some of the legalities affecting grizzlies in the U.S. You can see in 1975, they were listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act, just the lower 48 state grizzlies. In 1993, a plan was implemented to help them. In 2003, they were meeting their recovery goals in Yellowstone for the 6th year in a row, which was one of the requirements. And 2005, Fish and Wildlife Service proposed removing them. And in 2007, they were removed from the threatened species list. Now, I think it's really important to note the political landscape of the time. So even though we've got all this research, we are really studying these bears. It really matters who's in office, depending on what kind of action gets taken. So you can notice that 2007, as George Bush was still in power, when he was president, it was removed from the list. Obama was elected, so a judge overturns that decision to delist them. And then again, Trump gets elected, and he has now, his office has now taken them off the list again.
And also, just last year, they made it legal to shoot denning bears in Alaska.
Oh, so she said they just recently made it legal to kill denning bears in Alaska. Because yeah, you can't shoot bears in Alaska for game, for sport. Usually those females with their cubs are protected. However, I guess that is changing now. So there's a lot of debate on whether or not they should be protected in the lower 48. So people, if you're arguing on the side of why they should be kept, why we should still protect them, well, first of all, there's a lot of stuff changing in their landscape right now. Specifically their diet. So you guys saw how much their lifestyle is formed around where they can find food. Their whole year is built around what they're eating. And so with climate change, it's kind of changing the availability of some of those foods. So scientists are arguing that we haven't been able to properly study the bears under these changing diets. So they think they should at least still be kept on so we can monitor them during these changes. And there's also a really large spiritual significance to Native Americans. So you can see this woman here holding a sign that says, "Why Yellowstone grizzlies are not trophies, they're sacred." Get the facts. So really culturally important. Now some people argue we should take them off. They don't need our help anymore. They're really healthy. There's an argument that they've reached their carrying capacity in Yellowstone at least, which basically means each bear needs a large amount of territory, especially to go look for food. They have reproduced enough, they've rebounded enough to where they're now needing to kind of expand that territory outside of Yellowstone. So the question is, do you let them expand outside of Yellowstone? Do you let them kind of explore the natural range they would? Or for a lot of people who live around the park, they might think that's not such a great idea, not something they're very comfortable with. All right, so the effects of delisting the grizzlies. Basically, Yellowstone has come out and said that they will still treat them the same. They're still going to be protected within the bounds of the park. But if they wander off the bounds of the park, which they may do due to looking for food or looking for a mate, then their fate's going to be decided by those states that they're in. Basically, states will get to decide if you can hunt them or what kind of protections they'll afford to the bears. However, the population does have to stay above 500 for the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And if it falls below 600, those states have to curb their hunting laws. All right, so the biggest current threats to bears, to grizzly bears, are habitat destruction, climate change, and human conflict. So habitat destruction is pretty obvious. We're an ever-expanding population of people, and we do get pretty uncomfortable with the thought of grizzlies being near us. In addition to the fact that we're kind of segmenting their areas by building more roads. Climate change I'll get into, but basically all of these, both of these threats are going to lead to more human conflict, which is ultimately the demise for most grizzly bears. All right, so effects in climate change. First of all, it's going to affect their kind of yearly clock. So hibernation, they're going to start hibernating later. Means a lot of bears will still stay on the landscape. They're not getting that temperature cue to kind of start changing their habits. And that leaves them out exposed and where a lot of accidental killings happen. They're also leaving their dens earlier, so that means there's already kind of a lack of food in the spring. There's not too much for them to eat, so that's going to be even worse for them if they come out earlier. And whenever they get a disruption in their food sources, they're going to go looking for it, and that might lead them into human areas. All right, another change in their diet might just come from the berries that grow. So they really depend on berries during a certain time of the summer. Usually they'll, like Elizabeth was saying on their diet slide, they kind of go through changes in what they're eating based on what's available. So usually there's a little bit of a salmon a boom in the spring for a little while. Then berries are in bloom, they'll go eat the berries. Then a really big salmon boom in the fall where they're going to eat that. But now that berries are blooming earlier because of climate change, there's an overlap in those food sources. So an overlap when some salmon are present and an overlap when the berries are present. So the bears have to make a decision. They either eat the salmon or the berries. And then when the berries would normally be in bloom, there's kind of a gap now. So these changes in diet make them kind of expand their territory. They have to go looking where food is, and it's always plentiful in areas with humans. Another effect on their diet is how pests are changing due to climate change. So one of their major food sources in Yellowstone is the whitebark pine seed. And they're suffering from blister rust and mountain pine beetles right now, which has been exacerbated by climate change. So losing a major food source, that's kind of one reason some of those scientists say, hey, we need to study these guys a little more before we delist them. And so climate change and habitat destruction all funnel down to human conflict, unfortunately. And when they're led into areas or when they're looking for food, they might sniff out a farm or a place where people have not disposed of their waste properly. One other threat to them when they go searching for this food, when they smell it out, might be roads. So that's a big reason why a lot of bears are killed. They're going to be crossing the roads. People are speeding. They kind of cover this in the black bear presentation as well. But yeah, that is a big problem for them. Another problem is that when they do come into human areas, we're scared, right? A lot of people who live in these areas are scared. And the media has done a great job of kind of reinforcing this fear. Like Elizabeth was saying, they mostly eat plants, but they've gotten a really big reputation for being murderous killers. So you can see they're definitely represented as wanting to come after you, wanting to come kill, when really they want to avoid human areas if possible. And only about between 2 and 3 people are killed every year in all of North America from grizzlies. So, to give you some perspective, 40 to 50 people just in the U.S. die every year from being struck by lightning.
How many?
40 to 50, as opposed to 2 to 3 in all of North America from grizzlies, so very unlikely.
Be careful.
So that kind of brings us into our grizzly stories. They unfortunately were impacted by human conflict. So we were getting 4 grizzly cubs, they're all males, and their moms were both deemed nuisance bears where they're from. So they're both from Alaska. And basically their moms had been seen going into towns and going through people's garbage. And once that happens, people start getting scared, they start alerting authorities, and once they're deemed nuisance bears, they are often seen as too great a risk to the public safety to keep around, especially if they're a mother, because mother grizzlies tend to be extra aggressive. So some people saw mom and 2 cubs rummaging through garbage, and unfortunately both of those mothers did have to get put down. And the cubs were brought in by Alaska Fish and Game, and then eventually to the Alaska Zoo, where they're hibernating currently.